If you find yourself feeling fatigued, low energy, or if you've ever struggled with hormone health, then my next guest you're going to want to stick around for. His name is Tim Anderson. He's a personal provider of mine. He's an expert in hormone health. And in this episode, he's giving the secrets away to how you can live your best fulfilled life with energy, sex drive, how to combat fatigue, and how to be the best version of you to feel good, to look good, and to be optimal. You won't want to miss this episode, so stick around to the end. Tim Anderson, welcome to Diary of an Empath. You're back.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for the re-invitation. It's a pleasure.
So for those of you that have been with me since the beginning, you guys probably remember Tim. I think you were like my second guest that ever came on the show.
Yeah, it was one of the really, really early videos.
Yeah, I want to say you were like number 2 or number 3. And we actually had a lot of great feedback from that show. And we talked a lot about hormone health, women's health. And so I thought it would be an amazing retake to do another episode on this because there's so much to dive into when it comes to women's health and how we're feeling, especially for people like me who are getting a little older and are starting to feel it. So for you, when you think about why you do what you do and your mission, how do you define that?
So for me, I look at what I do is it's calling. It's a gift that I've been given. Western medicine. So I've been a PA for 20 years. For those of you who don't remember, first 10 years I did traditional medicine, family practice, urgent care, normal stuff. The last 9, 10 years I've been doing holistic wellness, hormone replacement therapy exclusively. What happens now compared to what happens the first 10 years, I actually impact patients. I make patients better. I get them off medications. I get them off cholesterol meds. I get them off sleep meds. I get them off anxiety meds. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And it's because I'm actually fixing the deficiencies. We're not statin deficient. We're not blood pressure deficient. We're not deficient in Lexapro. We're magnesium deficient. We're testosterone deficient. We're vitamin D deficient. And when you fix those deficiencies, the body changes and different things happen. And that's really what I do. And it's amazing. And the stories that my patients tell me, it's unbelievable. Like I was talking to one patient last week and I'd been seeing her for, I don't know, 6, 7 months, something like that. And she was telling me that her relationship with her husband, they'd have some really good days, 2, 3, 4 days in a row. Then they'd have an off day. They don't take a couple of days to reconnect. Then they'd have 2, 3, 4 good days in a row. Then they'd have an off day. Then take a couple of days to reconnect. She said that since she's been seeing me, they have not had an off day in at least 3 to 4 months. And she goes, my marriage is different. My relationship with my husband is different. And she goes, it's because of the hormones. Mm. And it's amazing what happens to people.
So I'm curious for you, like, being somebody who's had a lot of experience in like traditional medicine, what was that point for you where you started to notice like something's not right here? And why did you notice the differences? What was there that is different for you now versus back then?
So really the reason that I made the change was, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time, but so I was doing orthopedics when I made the change to doing hormone replacement therapy and holistic wellness. And as a PA, your lot in life is you're on call all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I was on call for my provider every week, every third week, Monday to Monday, 24/7. Now I didn't have to go to the hospital, but I was on pager call. So I was up all night, most nights, not getting good sleep. So by Friday, Saturday, Sunday that week, I was exhausted. I was tired. Mm-hmm. Well, my doc told me, he goes, hey, somebody left our call schedule. You're going to start taking call every other week. And I said, absolutely not. And so one of my buddies was doing hormone replacement therapy and it was a classmate and we would see each other periodically. And he was like, you should come do this with me. He goes, your personality. He goes, the changes that I'm seeing in my patients. He goes, mm-hmm. It's absolutely amazing. I didn't realize it at the time, but when he told me I was going to go every other week, I called my friend and I was like, hey, I'm ready. Let's go. And I'll take a position. And he found a position for me. I didn't realize at the time what I was doing, but what I was doing is I was protecting myself. I was protecting my adrenals because I was so exhausted at the end of the week.
Mhm.
I knew that every third week I was exhausted. I was going to be more exhausted every other week. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but now I understand subconsciously why I made that decision. And so I've always been frustrated with Western medicine because a lot of patients come in, you put them on a good plan, diabetic, eat better, take your sugar, do a little exercise. Let's recheck you in 6 weeks. They come back in and their sugar's higher, they're 10 pounds more in weight, and they're like, I checked my sugar twice in 6 weeks and I just need another pill to feel better. Nobody wants to take responsibility for themselves. Everybody wants to, Western medicine has made people dependent on them. Western
Mhm.
medicine has
Yeah.
made you medicine dependent.
Yep.
Here's a blood pressure med, here's a this, here's a that. Nobody will hold you accountable. Hey, what about your diet? Hey, what about your exercise? Hey, what about your sleep? You need to do better for you and you need to participate in this. And that's what I do now. And I tell my patients, hey, yes, I'm going to give you lots of stuff. We're going to talk about supplements. We're going to talk about hormones, but you are not going to be better unless you participate in this exercise. You have to protect yourself. You have to use the word no in your vocabulary. You have to unplug. You have to do you. And
Mhm.
so that's really what makes the difference is it's the participation of the patients and they buy in and they're motivated to get better. And that's the real big difference.
Yeah, I think we've been conditioned to just get a quick fix for things.
Mhm.
It's the society we live in. Like we click on something, it's instant. We're a swipe left, swipe right generation with dating.
Absolutely.
We want instant gratification. And I think that that conditioning has trickled over into our health, right? Because I want, now we got Ozempic, right? Ozempic, you can just take it. I don't know too much about Ozempic, but it's showing a lot of very quick weight loss and
Yep.
people are buying into it because we like the idea of instant gratification and then we get the dopamine hits and that it's like this rat race. And I've noticed a difference between like the US and even other countries, like when I go and visit other places, that the diet is different, the way of the culture is different, the walking culture is different, the way that they take care of themselves is different, and I'm noticing that they're living longer, especially in these blue zones. Do you think that there's a difference between the way that our culture is handling it, and are we seeing, based on the data, more diseases on this side of the world versus other places? Have you noticed any differences with that?
So I don't know if I could say there's more diseases, but there's definitely more metabolic syndrome in
Mhm.
our society than other societies. We spend the most per capita for healthcare per person, and yet our age of living continues to go down. And so there's reasons for that. And part of it is the instant gratification society. So you talk about Ozempic. Yeah, Ozempic is a nice tool, but that's all it is a tool. Just like HCG, just like phentermine, just like South Beach diet. It's a freaking tool. And I tell my patients all the time, yes, do I use it in my practice? Absolutely.
Mhm.
But it's a tool. And I tell my patients, if you don't change what you put in your mouth when you stop your Ozempic or your South Beach diet or your phentermine or your HCG diet or your whatever you're doing, your weight's coming back. And so if you're not going to change your diet, save your money. And so, and it's not just, again, everybody goes to their primary care physician, they'll get an Ozempic or whatever. And it's not just about that. It's about looking at the whole picture. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of European, Asian countries do is like in Europe, for example, they don't use genetically modified wheat and corn. In America, it's genetically modified wheat and corn. So my patients who have Hashimoto's thyroid disease, autoimmune, and they're telling me, hey, we're going to Europe for 12 weeks or, 3 days or whatever. I say, eat whatever you want. Eat the bread, eat the pasta, eat the rice, eat the whatever. They're like, well, I have Hashimoto's. I said, I don't care. I said, eat whatever you want. I said, you will be able to process it and you will notice you'll feel different. They'll go for their vacation. They'll come back like, dude, I ate everything and I lost 5 pounds
Mhm.
because their body is able to process it better. And so, as far as the long-term diseases, it's accumulation of our society. Like you said, we have instant gratification. We want everything. We have Netflix. We, the swipe and everything. We don't get up. We exercise less. Part of it is the stress. In America, again, we have a lot of inflation right now. There's a lot of other things. There's a lot of outside factors.
Mhm.
So a lot of people are having two jobs. they're not getting enough sleep. There's a lot of factors that play into how people are feeling and why people aren't feeling as good.
So, stress and sleep, two things that we often know that is a problem, but we don't always know how to fix it, or those are the things that I've noticed the most that kind of get swept under the rug. How important is the amount of stress that we have in our life, and how important is sleep?
So let me start with sleep, because sleep for me is foundational. If
Mhm.
you are not sleeping, you are not going to recharge your battery, your adrenals. So that's going to make your stress even worse. So again, and everything that I talk about in my practice, and I tell my patients, everything's interconnected. We're not just going to talk about testosterone. We're not just going to talk about nutrition. We're not just going to talk about vitamin D. Yeah, we're going to talk about hormones. Hormones are magical. Hormones are amazing. But hormones are a piece of the puzzle. It's not the puzzle. Where's
Mhm.
your stress? Where's your hydration? Where's your sleep? Where's your vitamin D? Where's your thyroid? It's looking at everything. And so foundationally, if you're not sleeping 7, 8 hours for the most part through the night, uninterrupted for the most part, you're not going to recharge your battery. And if you don't recharge your battery, how are you going to have enough energy to get through the day? And then you're exhausted, and then you're drinking more coffee, which is putting more stress on your adrenals. It's circular.
Mhm.
And so for sleep, it's you have to, there's a lot of layers for sleep. There's pre-sleep routines, and when do you stop eating? When do you stop drinking water? What does your environment for sleep look like? Are you deficient in melatonin, progesterone? Do you have racing brain? Do you need GABA? Do you have sleep apnea? I mean, do you snore and occlude your own airway? It Does your partner snore and disrupt your sleep? And
Mhm.
I mean, there's so many factors that go into sleep, but absolutely, sleep is foundational, so important. And for me, it's all about the sleep. If you're not sleeping, you're never, in my opinion, going to feel amazing.
I feel like I've started, so you've been my provider. I can't even my 5 years at least. And sleep has always been a struggle for me. And it's not necessarily because I have to take my own responsibility for that because I have a lot of bad habits, right? I have a habit of being on my phone at night. I have a habit of decompressing, watching Netflix. That's kind of been my go-to for coping at the end of the day, right? Which I know is contributing to that sleep. And I'm curious to get your opinion on this because I got a lot of flack when I posted about this, but I'm single now. But the idea of like when I do eventually get a life partner, I'm manifesting that, but I don't want to sleep in the same bedroom as a partner. I don't. And the reason why is based off of a lot of the research that I've read is that couples that sleep apart sleep better and are typically happier for many reasons, maybe because they're sleeping better, maybe because they're able to decompress. But do you feel like there can be some benefits to couples sleeping apart? And if so, why?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely can be. There's also benefits of sleeping together because,
Mm,
again, intimacy and having contact and physical touch with your partner is super important to build
mhm.
that relationship and that bond. But if your partner snores like a freight train and you're not
I
sleeping through
can't
the
do it.
night, then you're going to be miserable the next day. And so, again, it all depends. And if your partner comes in and they want to watch TV, and so for me, again, it goes back to the habits. And so, like you were saying, the phone, the Netflix. And so for me, I call it sleep hygiene.
Mhm.
And so, you know, uh, it, basic foundational things. Don't try to stop eating 2 hours before bed. So your belly's empty. So your body is then resting and it's not on active metabolizing things. Try and stop drinking a couple hours water, a couple hours before bed. That way you're not getting up all night to freaking pee.
Mhm.
And then we talk about the environment. So your bedroom is for two activities and two activities only: sleep and sexual activity. That's it. I don't want you on Netflix. I don't want you on your phone. I don't want you bringing your podcast to edit. I don't want you bringing your taxes. I don't want you, my lawyers bringing their legal briefs into the bedroom, because when you bring those things into the bedroom, then when you go into the bedroom, then your mind starts thinking about those activities. I want your mind quiet. I want your mind calm. And first thing I tell my patients, go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time for 2 full weeks. I don't care if it's an off day. I don't care.
That's my
Go to,
hardest
go
is
to bed
getting
at,
up.
and we've had the conversation
Yeah.
before. And so you go to bed at 10 o'clock, you get up at 6, 7, 8, whatever your normal work day time is.
Mhm.
Go to bed at 10, get up at 6. For 2 straight weeks, you reset your brain. Um, you have to have a good, comfortable environment. Studies kind of show 60 to 70 degrees is kind of a comfortable environment. I think 60 is way too freaking cold.
60.
Yeah, that's way too cold.
Like
And so for us,
70.
we run our house at about 68 at night,
Okay.
and we run a couple of fans in there. And so you can still get under the blanket. You're still, comfortable, but you're not dying of heat. Okay. You want to make sure it's nice. You want to make sure that it's dark, for the most part. And that's really the basic things that we start with is, and if you in there and you're trying to go to sleep and you're trying to do good sleep hygiene and your partner's in there and they're on their phone and, they're on, watching TV, well, how are you going to sleep?
Mhm.
And so, yes, can there be benefits to being separate? Yes, but there's also a lot of benefit to being together. And that's why having those conversations and knowing your partner before, you get into a long-term relationship is so important.
Yeah, I agree. I still am gonna take the latter and, sleep separately. That's just me, been there, done that. But for people who find themselves more awake at night or that consistency is hard for them, and I'm part of that group. Do you think that there are people who are just naturally more nocturnal, or is that something like that's a myth that we can all become morning people? Because I want to be a morning person. I think my life would be so much more connected. It would be easier to get through things during the day if I could be a morning person, but I find it so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some people who are, but again, this is things that have happened in their life over long term. Like a lot of my medical people, my nurses who work night shift, they get a day job and they can't sleep, and they've been a night nurse for 20 years.
Mhm.
Your body's tuned that way. Now, can they turn around? Probably. I mean, you may have to go into something as far as like a hypnosis or something. There's other things that you can do, but just making sure you're not deficient in things, making sure progesterone's right, using melatonin to promote sleep. Again, developing those habits and struggling through, I don't want to get up today. Freaking get up.
Mhm.
And I think I think that most people should be able to turn themselves into more of a normal timing. But yeah, there's always outliers. There's always people who are going to be different. But again, if you're struggling to get up in the morning, for me, I'm always looking at what's your quality of sleep. If we've never done a sleep study, I'll send people for a sleep study because you may go, I don't snore, I don't pause. Well, you may not think you pause, but again,
Mhm.
you live alone, you sleep alone. How do you know you don't pause? So
Mhm.
let's get a sleep study. Let's make sure we're not missing something. Because if there's a sleep issue over here, and I'm all about, hey, let's talk about your DHEA and let's talk about this and let's talk about this, and we never look at your sleep, we may not be looking at the right problem. Now, you go get a sleep study, you don't have anything, awesome. Get a t shirt, check the box. Great. We know it's not sleep apnea.
Mhm.
Now let's talk about other things.
Okay, so let's talk about those other things. So I think a lot of people go to their primary care and they get, a basic hormone panel done, thyroid, check the hormones, see where they're at, and they come back normal, but they still feel like shit. So here's what I found interesting when I met you and started really understanding this, that there's a lot more tests that can be run that typically aren't run and more to understand of standardized
Yeah.
labs versus optimal. So let's start with, maybe something that's really important like thyroid. What is thyroid health? Why is it important? And what do we need to understand about thyroid in terms of its functioning?
So, thyroid is the master hormone gland, sits right here, kind of in the middle of the neck, butterfly shaped organ. Thyroid helps with energy, metabolism, less cloudy, foggy thinking, better hot, cold intolerance, better hair, skin, and nails, activates testosterone, less depression. It helps with constipation, helps regulates menstrual cycles. Thyroid is the master hormone gland. And so it's super important. And there's so many things that affect thyroid, toxicities, deficiencies in iodine and selenium, age. Women at a 7-to-1, 8-to-1 are more predisposed to thyroid issues than men. And so it's looking at all those things. Obviously, you have to look at labs really to get a good picture of where the function is. But Problem with labs, like you said, what's normal, what's optimal. So I always give this explanation to my patient, and invariably 75% of them, their jaws drop because they're like, what do you mean? My doctor told me my numbers were normal. So who gets labs drawn regularly?
Mhm.
It's not the healthy, awesome feeling people. Think about it. Talk to your peers, talk to your friends. How many of them go and get labs drawn regularly? Not many.
Yeah, not many.
Right.
Even
And
my
so,
patients, I'll ask them, like, "When's the last time you got your labs done?" Because knowing what I know, I always wanna rule out other things before I say, like, "Oh, yeah, you're depressed, go see a psychiatrist and get some meds." But most of them don't get them done.
yep. And so
Yeah.
if it's not the healthy, awesome people getting labs drawn, who is? Chronic illness, high blood pressure, low thyroid, prediabetes, people who don't feel good, who want to feel better. Yes, there are some people who get labs drawn, don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
it's not the majority. And so on the lab, usually on the right hand side, you're going to see a column that says reference ranges. These are the normal, quote unquote, normal ranges. Well, what do those normal ranges represent? Well, if it's not the healthy, awesome people getting labs, they can't be in the pool. You don't know what their numbers are.
That's true.
And so if you don't know what their numbers are, who's in the pool? Chronic illness, high blood pressure, low thyroid, et cetera, et cetera. That's your reference ranges. So
Mm.
I don't want my patients to be referenced against chronic illness. I don't feel good. I want my patients to be optimal. And it's not about the number, it's about them. Okay. So for thyroid, Western medicine, traditional Western medicine, they're going to get a TSH. And the way the thyroid function is TSH is a brain hormone that goes from the brain to the thyroid that stimulates production of T4. T4 is produced in the thyroid. It's inactive, doesn't do anything to make you feel better, not make you feel better. T4 has to get converted to T3. T3, that's the active component. Energy metabolism, less cloudy, foggy, better hot, cold intolerance, better hair, skin, and nails, activates testosterone, less depression. Most Western medicine docs will get TSH and maybe get a total T4.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. TSH, the reference range goes up to 4. All that means is I like that number around 1. So what that tells me, if you're at 4, your brain is sending more signal trying to get your thyroid to work more. So, all right, cool. So then we look at the T4 if it's drawn, and let's say it's in the normal range, 8, 7, 8, 9, whatever. Well, awesome. Your thyroid's producing T4, but it doesn't mean anything because it's not it's not the active function. Now, T4, this is where you get into kind of some of the what are you missing pieces. Do you have enough selenium? Do you have enough iodine to convert that T4 to T3? What I'm finding out, I've been doing a lot of reading and some podcasts and some lectures. More and more people we're figuring out are iron deficient, are iodine deficient. And when you're iodine deficient, you can't turn that key, doesn't go into the lock to turn the thyroid on. And so iodine helps with controlling thyroid, but not just the thyroid, it helps with breast tissue, helps with ovaries, helps with uterus, helps with pancreas, helps with the prostate in men. And so if you don't have enough iodine, your T4 can't convert to free T3. So most Western medicine, they look at the TSH like, oh, you're normal, but somebody has bad metabolism, they're overweight, they're hot, cold all the time. They're losing their hair and they're told your labs are normal.
Mhm.
Well, they haven't looked at the active form. And that's an important lab that we look at is we look at the free T3. Range 2.2 to 4.5. I like to see my people around 4. And so if you're in the 2s, if you're in the low 3s and you're like, yeah, I'm, constipated, I'm losing hair, I'm wearing a coat in the middle of the summer in Orlando, and I'm always cold, your thyroid probably isn't functioning right. And your number's normal, but I'm probably going to make sure one, you're on enough selenium, you're on enough iodine, multivitamin, and we're going to talk about thyroid optimization. And so it's not about the number. A lot of people, well, I'm not hypothyroidism. No, you're not hypothyroidism. Your number isn't low, but you have what we call subclinical hypothyroidism, where you have symptoms of low thyroid because your number isn't high enough for you because the reference range is the sick people.
Did you guys know that I'm not only a therapist, but I'm also a coach and a professional tarot reader? Now, it's not exactly me hovering over a crystal ball telling your future. It's a way to connect with your guides on life issues such as career and love and spirituality. And sometimes people need one on one coaching to help them through breakups, toxic relationships, healing the mother wound, their spiritual path, or navigating tools as an empath. So I do all of these things to help my clients pursue life and decisions and understand themselves. So if you are interested in one-on-one coaching or a tarot reading, click the link below to get started. Okay, back to the podcast. Yeah, I think when I was in my late 20s and just feeling absolutely tanked and like shit, or you shouldn't be perimenopausal in your late 20s. And I remember my labs being normal and being frustrated because I'm like, I don't know why I'm feeling so fatigued. And as soon as I started my thyroid, it's like a light bulb came on and everything started feeling better. And I'm curious for you because I start thinking about when we're deficient in certain hormones or when we're deficient in certain nutrients. Is there any data that's showing a connection with early onset diseases, cancers, anything that we're now being predisposed to because of the fact that we're deficient in some of these hormones that we need?
Oh, absolutely. And so diabetes is a big one, and metabolic, really diabetes. So one of the benefits of testosterone is testosterone helps with insulin sensitivity. And so if your insulin is more sensitive, your sugars start to go down. And so anybody who's diabetic or pre-diabetic should absolutely have testosterone checked because we're seeing deficiencies. A lot of my patients, when I start them on testosterone therapy, they have to decrease their diabetic medications because their sugars start to drop and they become hypoglycemic. There's newer studies talking about Alzheimer's, dementia with estrogen, with testosterone deficiency. When a woman goes into menopause and their estrogen goes down to that of a man, estrogen is cardioprotective. So a woman's cardiovascular risk approaches that of a man. It helps with osteoporosis. There's a lot of benefits. Vitamin D, for example, normal levels 30 to 100. Big
I'm always
range.
low.
Big range.
Yeah.
And so I like my patients in the 70 to 90 range. When you're above 70, you have a 50% decreased risk in cancer. Notice, not an
Wow.
elimination of risk, a decreased risk. But it's not just the hormone piece. There's things that we can do as well, like make sure that we're alkaline, not acidic. When we're acidic, we're predisposed to cancers, injuries, illness, inflammation, osteoporosis, pain. And so what we can do is we can check first urines in the morning, have my patients get some pH strips or a pH meter. Are you above 6.7 to 7? If you're not, more greens, more alkaline water, decrease your risk. Looking at, again, when you have inflammation, you're at an increased risk of being ill. And so again, look, it's back to the whole picture again. It's not just the hormones. It's not just the minerals. It's what are we putting in our mouth too. But yes, absolutely, there are increased risks for sure when we have deficiencies in our hormones.
Okay, so you mentioned testosterone. So when you say testosterone, are we talking men or women as well? And if it's women, why is that important for women?
So I always get asked this question, and absolutely, testosterone is a female hormone, just like progesterone. I was like, that's a female hormone. Absolutely not. Progesterone's a male hormone too, just not in as high of a dose. And so, for example, progesterone, calm, cool, collected, reduced stress, reduced anxiety, helps keep you asleep. I've personally been on progesterone. It'll be 9 years this summer. I've been taking progesterone for sleep. It's absolutely amazing. I don't ever miss a night. I went on vacation one time, left my progesterone at the house. We just moved here. We'd only been here maybe 6 months. I called somebody that I'd met around the corner. Didn't really know him all that well. I said, hey man, I'm on vacation and I left something at my house that I really need. Will you go to my house, put 6 of these pills in a baggie and mail it to me overnight? He was like, what? He goes, what am I getting? I said, progesterone. He goes,
Am I passing any drugs to you? Because I want to make sure.
And so, I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And so for testosterone, testosterone helps in so many things, energy, libido. Everybody thinks testosterone is about energy. It's about the sex and it's about getting big and strong. Yes, those things are super important. I call it the softer symptoms that are even more impactful on a day-to-day basis for me. So yes, energy, libido, focus, drive, motivation, memory, sleep, lean muscle mass, less inflammation, stronger bones, monotherapy for depression. Yeah, sure. Energy, libido, strength, great. But if you have those other things and your work is better and your marriage is better and your relationships are better, to me, that's even more important than the energy, the sex, and strength.
Mhm.
And so, absolutely, it's important for women too.
And I'm a testament to that. And I think like for a lot of girls and a lot of, women who are listening right now, I think the fear is like I don't want to look like a guy and I don't want to, because we think testosterone, we think steroids and bodybuilding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm here to tell you that it's not exactly how it works. The dosage matters, right? Because
Absolutely.
women have
And delivery
testosterone.
matters.
Right.
You
Right, because
know,
like, when I first started, I didn't metabolize it, and it was too much, and so we paid attention to my symptoms and how it was. I've been on it for, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years because I just didn't produce enough
I think it's
naturally.
actually closer to 6, 7 years.
Yeah, has it been that long? Yeah, and I will say it makes a big difference. For me, I just didn't make enough, and I never even knew that women made testosterone naturally, and I didn't know that men also make estrogen.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, so these are, I guess
And
these
progesterone.
and progesterone. So, and sometimes we're just deficient in this. So, what do you say to people who listen to any of like, I want to age naturally, more power to you. But what do you say to those people who are like, why are we taking hormones if we're supposed to age and this is a natural process? Like, what is your rebuttal to that for people who are against it or hesitant to do hormone therapy?
So you always have to look at what is somebody's frame. Where did they come from? Who's been in their ear? Who has told them that hormones cause cancer? Who's told them that their primary care doctor, you don't ever need testosterone, you don't ever need thyroid, you don't ever need these things. They had a family member who had an adverse effect from it. And so you always have to kind of dig down deeper when somebody is adamant no. Where are they coming from? What's their frame? And you have to kind of peel that back and you have to address that. And so for me, it's you don't, aging is natural, absolutely. But we age faster because of the toxicities, because of the stress,
Yes.
because of the poor nutrition. The nutritional content in our food today is different than it was 30, 40 years ago. And people, there's studies, this is out there. If think about it, farms these days, they used to rotate crops, rest fields, let them, regenerate nutrients. Now they're planting crops every season, sometimes twice a season.
Mhm.
And they're burning things. So we're magnesium deficient, we're zinc deficient, the food we're eating. This is why everybody is micromineral deficient and everybody with me gets a multivitamin. And so it's looking at what do you want to do? Or if you're having pain, if again, a diabetic, if their testosterone is low, again, I bring their testosterone up and all of a sudden their sugars get better. Well, do they have to go through the side effects of diabetes?
Mhm.
When if I bring their testosterone to a more optimal level, not crazy high, like you said, levels matter, symptoms matter. It's not just give you a lot of testosterone. That's not what this is about.
Mhm.
Yes, I can make my patients big, I can make my patients strong. Absolutely. But it's about the health, it's about the longevity, it's about the long term wellness. We're not trying to put people at unnecessary risk
Mhm.
with this. I'm trying to give you better quality of life, better sex life, better energy. And it's looking at what does the individual person want? But it's asking the questions.
So, perimenopause, going into menopause, what are some of the changes that a woman can expect kind of going through those changes? And are those changes preventable or reversible if we're supplementing with the right things?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I tell my female patients, but also my male patients, menopause, the male version of that is andropause.
Mm.
And so it's the same concept, decreasing in hormones. And so for my female patients, we talk about three main sex hormones. We talk about progesterone, we talk about estrogen, and we talk about testosterone. And so progesterone is the first hormone that starts to go down when you get into your early to mid 30s. I call them my soccer moms. And most most families in America these days, a lot of families have two jobs. They have kids, and most of the time, the female is responsible for the kids and they have a job. And so I call my soccer moms. They're run ragged. They're chasing kids. They're chasing a job. They're managing a home. And they get into their early to mid 30s. Their progesterone starts to go down. The purpose of progesterone, calm, cool, collected, reduce stress, reduced anxiety, sleep. Now all of a sudden they start to have some anxiety. They start to panic a little bit. They're not as restful at night. They're not sleeping as well. They go to their primary care physician and they get put on an antidepressant and they get put on a sleep medication. If they just checked hormones and they put this person, in my opinion, on some progesterone, bioidentical, not synthetic, and that matters too, the version, the type of hormone. You don't want synthetics, you want bioidenticals. And so if you're using a bioidentical and you're on the right dose of progesterone, I have patients who have stopped the sleep meds and the anti-anxiety medications. And so that's usually the first hormone that starts to go down. Estrogen and testosterone are kind of all over the place at this point, and they kind of just go up and down, up and down. Then a female will start have regular cycles still. They may start to develop some estrogen dominance where they have hot flashes. They're still having cycles, but they're having hot flashes. They're like, oh, I'm estrogen
Maybe
deficient.
that was me earlier.
And so, no, it's actually estrogen dominance and not enough progesterone production. So now you're having hot flashes, you're having water retention, you're having bloating, you're having moodiness around the time of your cycle, you're having headaches. And so you give progesterone, now all of a sudden those symptoms improve. Then as you move further along that perimenopausal phase, now you start skipping cycles. You have a cycle in January, you don't have anything for 2, 3, 4 months, then you have a cycle, you don't have anything for 8 months, then you have a cycle. Technically, once you do not have a cycle for 365 days, that's menopause. And so they go up and they go down, and then eventually the ovaries stop producing, your FSH number on your lab start to go up, and then we see the symptoms. For the estrogen, heart health, brain health, bone health, vaginal dryness, hot flashes, better mentation, less fine lines and wrinkles, less depression. And so you start re-supplementing those with the cream, with the patch, with the pellet, and it's amazing what happens to women and their hot flashes. Like, I'm up and down, clothes off and on, 3 changes of pajamas a night, and you put them on some estrogen, and all of a sudden, like, dude, I slept all night, and I didn't have to change my pajamas once, and they're like so thankful.
Quality of life. I always feel like quality of life is really what we should be looking at. Like,
100%.
why should you have to suffer if you don't have to?
Right.
I'm curious about sex. Let's talk about sex, because there's a lot of people who are now starting to ask these questions of like, why is my sex drive going down? I'm not interested as much. And a lot of times it's connected to our hormone health. So what is the connection there? And if there's somebody who's listening who is going through a low libido cycle or is just not interested in sex anymore, but wants to be, right? How do we make that change? Is it possible to help that person's libido go up?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I always tell my patients, I always tell my patients, I'm a physician assistant. I'm not a freaking artist, but I love to draw for my patients. I draw lots of pictures. And so it's not just about the hormones. There are other things that affect libido, that affect sex life too. And so the picture that I love to draw is I'll draw a circle and I'll say, this is a man's brain. And I'll put a dot in the middle and I'll say that dot represents safety, security, where are my children? Where's my 401k? And the rest of the circle represents his libido and his sex life and his interest and desire. Then I'll say, and then for my female patient, I said, this is your brain. Your brain, all this outside is your family, where are my children? What's our 401k? Is our house locked? Where's everything at? And it's the security, it's the safety piece. And the dot in the middle, that's your libido. So we're totally opposite brained. And so a man, the house could be on fire 2 rooms away, and he'll be like, hey, we still got about 3 minutes till the fire gets here. Let's get it on. And so it's just different. Now, as far as the libido piece, it's for women, it's not just the testosterone, it's also the estrogen piece. And so it's the balance. And so absolutely testosterone, you need the testosterone, you need the desire, you need the urge. You need, but it's also for a woman, the comfort. And so again, the vaginal dryness piece. Are you having discomfort with sexual activity? Are you able to achieve orgasm? And I tell my women all the time, everybody wants to talk about penile insertion and penetration. That's not where most women orgasm. Most women
Facts.
orgasm with clitoral stimulation. And
Exactly.
so
Men, listen to this,
you
please.
have to you have to understand that. And so yes, you have to have comfort. That's a piece of it. If a woman is not comfortable, she's not going to want to participate, no matter
Mhm.
what her desire is. Yes, oh no, that hurts every time. I'm out.
Mhm.
And and I tell my patients, I'm like, if you need an assisted device, grab a toy.
Mhm.
They are great benefits, but it's looking at levels and it's not just the number. What level do you need? And I have patients who we've gotten their testosterone a little bit high and they come in, they'll say, hey, can I turn this down? And I'm like,
Mhm.
sure. And I always ask, are we having, are we having any acne? Are we having facial hair? Are we having side effects? What's happening? She's like, no. She's like, my husband works in construction and I'm having to call him every day and ask him what job site he's at because I need to go over. She's like, I don't have time for that. So I'm
Mhm.
like, absolutely, let's turn your dose down. And so again, it's not just about men having too high testosterone. Women can have it too, but it's all about the balance. And that's what the key is. You have to talk to your provider. You have to have an open dialogue. I tell my patients, we use adult words. We talk adult language.
Mhm.
We talk about the clitoris. We talk about the vagina. We talk about adult words. And so if you're not comfortable, I might make you a little embarrassed. And so it's super important to be able to have that communication and tell your provider what's happening. And if there's something that's off, I have to know.
It's so good though, because a lot of people don't have these conversations. A lot of providers don't have these conversations. I've worked the majority of my career in the hospital setting and working with certain providers that would put it on me like, hey, I'm not sure exactly how to have this conversation. Can you kind of fill in the gaps with this? There's a lot of providers that are not comfortable having those specific types of
Yeah.
conversations. And then women, I think, go through life, especially depending on what generation you grew up in, with the generation behind us, not comfortable talking about sex, not comfortable talking about how women can have orgasms too. It's not just about men. But I will say that when I first started testosterone, my dose got really high for me personally because I don't metabolize it like a normal person. And we figured that out, right?
Right.
However, I kind of got a glimpse into what it's like to have a man's sex drive. And I was like, holy shit, is this what it's like? Like, do you guys just go through life? Just no wonder why it's so hard for some men to, it was insane. It was to the point where, like, oh, listen, I'm going to TMI here, but it was like 4 or 5 times a day that I had to knock it out. And we looked
Yeah.
at the labs, and my labs was like 400. It was through the roof. And I never had a problem with my sex drive before, but for the first time, I'm like, is this what it's like to go through life as a man? It's like kind of good and it's kind of too much for me. But I
Yep.
understand the role that testosterone plays. And so if you're low or if you just are not producing certain things, that could be why. It makes a big
It
difference.
makes a huge difference. I have patients all the time, even my female patients, they'll come in here, they're like, I know what it feels like to be an 18-year-old guy.
Mhm.
And again, it's the same thing. They're like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is too much. I don't want this much. Can we please turn it down? But it's also this is how I get some of my patients too. It's kind of interesting. So a lot of patients, a lot of people, a lot of couples, they come and everybody's a little bit on the low side testosterone wise. Sex once a week, sex once every other week. It's okay because both people have no interest. A girl talks to her girlfriend, the girlfriend's seeing a provider, they come and they see me maybe, and we start them on something, and all of a sudden their libido goes up. Well, their partner's still at the once a week, once every other week stage. And so they have more desire, more interest. Now all of a sudden that female is, hey, my significant other needs to come see you. Or the significant other's like, hey, can I come see you? Because now we're at different levels. And
Mhm.
so I have a lot of couples that I see because everybody's low, and then all of a sudden there's an imbalance, and the other person who remains low sees how different the other person is.
Is it depression or is it hormones? And if there is a link between hormone health and depression, what are some of the key things to check to see if there's an imbalance?
So absolutely, can it be depression? Yes, you can absolutely have depression. Can it be hormones? Most of the time it is. And again, it's multifactorial. It's thyroid can help with depression. Testosterone helps with depression. Progesterone helps with anxiety. Estrogen helps with depression. Magnesium helps with anxiety. It's multiple things that you're going to be looking at to see what is what is off. And so it's getting a full comprehensive panel, having the conversation, and then starting and making changes.
NAD. What is it? Why is it important? Doesn't matter.
So NAD is one of my favorite peptides. So a lot of people talk about peptides, but not a lot of people know what peptides are. And so peptides are chains of amino acid,
Mhm.
and those amino acids are coded for something. So the peptide is coded to produce or stimulate something. That peptide goes into the cell, attaches to where it's supposed to attach to, and stimulates production of whatever it's supposed to produce. There are peptides. Insulin, for example, is a peptide. It's one of the first peptides. Not a lot of people realize that. Ozempic, Wegovy, those are all peptides. Peptides help with anxiety. Peptides help with growth hormone stimulation. Peptides help with anxiety, help with sleep, help with immunity, help with repair. There's so many peptides out there. They're freaking amazing. So NAD is an awesome peptide. I have personally been on NAD. This August, it'll be 4 years I've been on NAD myself.
So you've been on it before the craze kind of started.
Yes.
Mhm.
And so I've been using peptides in my practice for about 7 years. And I love peptides. I'm aggressive with peptides. I'll talk to you about peptides as long as you want to have a conversation.
Mhm.
And so NAD, it's B3 is essentially what it is. It's one of the most abundant neurotransmitters in our body. And it helps with energy. Really what it does is it helps with cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is in the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is what produces energy in our Krebs cycle. And if you want to reverse aging, decrease aging, turn back aging, you have to improve or increase that cellular respiration. When you can maintain that Krebs cycle producing the right amount of ATP per cycle, you do not age as fast, period. And what NAD does is it helps with that cellular respiration. And so NAD helps with energy. It helps with telomere length, anti-aging. It helps with cognition. It helps with metabolism. It can help with alcohol cravings. NAD is amazing. It's a subcutaneous injection. There are pills, NAC, that convert to NAD. I'm not as big of a fan of things that I have to depend on converting in my stomach, in my system to another product. Because what if I don't have the pathway? What if my pathway doesn't work as well? I'm not going to get as good of an
Well,
outcome.
when you say pathway, like are we thinking like a door, like that door could be closed to not allow that pathway in?
So closed, deficient in in a mineral that helps that pathway function.
Mhm.
So again, there are a lot of toxicities. There's a lot of bumps in pathways that if all the steps are not functioning right, it's not just one step, NAC, NAD. There's pathways that it has to go down to produce NAD. So I personally like NAD injections. A lot of IV lounges do NAD IV,
Mhm.
and they're, in my opinion, super crazy expensive, and they do not last very long. And that's why I like our NAD injections, because initially you start out at a daily injection, and then I move you to injections twice weekly. You control the dose based on how you feel. And again, for me, it's an energy. Do you have enough energy or an increased energy that you like from dose to dose? And so for me, when I started out at a standard dose for 7 days. Then I jumped to kind of the end dose. I'm not a very patient person, and I'm not the best patient anyways. And
Mhm.
so I jumped straight from 15 to 30 on my NAD. I did not like it. I felt like I was vibrating. I felt like I could taste colors. I'm very high energy. You know
Mhm.
me. We've known each
Mhm.
other a minute. I did not like how I felt. It was too much. So I backed my dose down and I felt amazing. And I stayed at the same dose for about 2 years. And then I increased my dose slowly over time to the dose that I'm at now. And I do it twice a week. And I absolutely love it. Most of my patients who do it can absolutely see a difference and they love it. Now, there's some other peptides, some newer peptides that are along the lines of NAD, but are supercharged NAD, so to speak. So there's a peptide called MOTS-c, and MOTS-c helps with cellular respiration. The way that I kind of position it is MOTS-c is like NAD on steroids. Then there's a new one that I just got access to that I actually ordered 2 vials, and I haven't played with it yet because I still have about a quarter vial of NAD that I'm working through. So this one is called SS31. SS31 is like MOTS-c on steroids, and it helps with repair and regeneration, and it's supposed to be out of this world. And so I'm super excited. Maybe in a week or two, I'll be done with my NAD. I can jump on the SS31. I'm going to run a 90-day protocol. Then I'm actually going to get some labs because it has some regeneration properties that they talk about. And so I'm going to run some labs on myself. And I always play with things, and my patients know this. I usually will play with things, or unfortunately, my wife, I guess, her burden in life is she's married to me because I don't have some parts and pieces. I can't test certain things. So if I want to test something, I'll bring it home and throw it to her and have her test it for me and give me feedback because I like to kind of know what's happening before I bring things to my patients.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love NAD and it's magical.
I think the anti-aging world is definitely, I think we're going to learn a lot more in the next 10 to 15 years. For people who are listening and are going through some of these changes, what would be your like final piece of advice, or knowing everything that you've learned over the years? What would be the one piece of advice you would have for yourself or anyone that's listening?
Man, that's a hard question because there's so many things that I love to do that I personally do that I help my patients with. For me, it really has to be the stress piece. That's to me the biggest thing. You have to control your stress. And I tell my patients, I need you to do more you. I need you to be intentional on using the word no in your vocabulary. I need you to unplug and disconnect. I need you to be selfish. I don't need you to be bitchy or anything, but I need you to be selfish with your energy. I don't need you drawn into everybody else's madness. And I say long and short, I need you to do more you. I need you to do less of others. When you do that, you will burn your hormones slower. Now, it doesn't fix your deficiencies. It doesn't fix your thyroid. Again, you still need your nutrition. You still need your hydration. There's so many things. But stress, overdoing, and I tell patients, you don't have to go out every night. You don't have to say yes. Your buddies call you, hey, let's go have happy hour. No, I'm just going to chill tonight with my family. Or, for you, I'm just going to hang out with my people and I'm just going to be at home. To me, that's the number one thing that breaks us down is stress.
Tim, always a pleasure. Thank you for your work that you do. You're always so data driven and super smart, and you're like an encyclopedia of hormones. So I will link where people can find you, especially if you guys are interested in any type of information or to get in contact with Tim. He's great at what he does. Highly recommend. Thanks for coming back on.
Awesome. Thank you. It was a pleasure.